Parents gave away sister the house I bought for them. I stopped the mortgage and the house got sold. I, 28 male, have been paying a mortgage of a house that I bought for my parents only to know that they gifted it to my sister, 25 female. Worse, they didn't even bother to tell me. I was always aware that my parents loved my sister more than me, but I didn't realize it would come to this. My parents have a toxic and profound love for my sister, but sadly they got nothing for me. As the eldest of two, they always had higher hopes for me. While I was instilled with a sense of responsibility from an early age, my younger sister, Perry, was treated like a princess. Not exactly like one because my parents are not that well off, but she got to do everything she wanted. My parents had no academic expectations from her. She got to explore her passion and hobbies while I was immersed in studies. That's how it always was. My parents weren't exactly subtle about their expectations of me. They made it clear that I had to build a strong career. I cannot falter my education. After I graduated high school, my parents took out loans and stretched their savings to get me through a tech school. I suggested instead of liquidating their savings, they co-sign my education loan, and I would pay it off after I get a job. My parents were against the loan because of a high interest rate. They said I would have to pay 1.5 times the principal amount. I was too young to understand the complexities of a loan. I thought if my parents were saying so, it must be correct. I was barely 18 then. Little did I know, then they saved me from the burden of a loan only to exploit me later. Soon after my college, I landed a solid job in exactly what they wanted for me. No doubt they were proud of me, but I always felt some sort of commodity. Like, they invested in me with an expectation that they would get good in return. They never missed any opportunity to say, "We sacrificed so much for you." Don't forget that. Don't forget your roots. Don't forget where you came from. Initially, it seemed harmless. I felt they were trying to keep me humble, but eventually, I realized it was an emotional manipulation. Guilt trips are their specialty. As I started working, the pressure ramped up. Whenever I visited home, Dad would give hints about how I should never forget that he has burnt his savings to pay for my college and how I should work hard and pay off their sacrifices. I know my parents needed a house. They had been saving it up for many years, but they spent that money on my college. I remember I had just begun my career. I didn't even complete a year at work when I was visiting home for a vacation. While having dinner with them, my father looked me dead in the eye and said, "We did our part by paying for your education. Now it's your turn. You should soon plan to buy us a house. We can outlive on rent forever, can't we?" I had a sinking feeling in my stomach when he said it. I knew they were expecting me to buy them a house, but not so soon. I wasn't even a year of my career. I was still sharing the apartment with 2 other guys because I couldn't afford to have one by myself, and my parents demanded I buy them a house. Like, what the F? I protested, "Dad, I just started my job. I can't afford to rent an apartment for myself. How do you expect such a huge financial commitment from me?" He said he didn't ask for it immediately, but was putting the words in my head so that I'd plan and work hard towards it. Mom chimed in, her voice deceptively sweet. "We put you through college. Without us, you wouldn't be where you are now. Think of it as paying us back." I didn't have the heart to argue. They weren't wrong. I was where I was because of their sacrifices, but sometimes their preachings became too much to take and I wanted to scream. "Who asked you to do it for me?" But I didn't have the nerve to talk back to my parents. I maintained a fair distance from them and only responded to their calls and texts when urgent, and visiting them was out of the question after that dinner table conversation. I used my hectic work as an excuse to avoid them. However, the obligation of buying them a house lived permanently in my head. So after 5 years of saving and working hard, I caved. I bought them a house, a nice, modest one, in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't extravagant, but it was comfortable. Everything seemed fine. I figured it was the least I could do for my parents after everything they'd done for me. I was making the mortgage payments for 3 years. I was even paying extra so I could foreclose it sooner. I have other plans in life, right? I want to buy my own house, travel, start a family, etc. I cannot have this loan going on forever. After buying this house, my parents' nagging did stop, and they proudly showed it off to their friends and relatives that their investment paid off. I didn't mind it, but did not close the gap between us. I continued to remain distant and didn't go home often. 2 days back, I decided to visit home after being swamped with work for months. I didn't tell my parents about it. I wanted to surprise them, but there was a surprise waiting for me instead. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Perry's car parked outside the house. I thought she was visiting. I felt good that it would be a family reunion. Perry got married and moved out when my parents were still living in the rented place. It was years since I had met her. The last I met her, it was her wedding. I knocked on the door, and Perry answered. She was in her PJs. I thought she was there for a short stay or something. We greeted and hugged. Then she asked me, "Hey, What are you doing here? I playfully replied, I could ask you the same thing. I stepped inside the house and asked her, where's mom and dad? She sat on the couch and casually replied, oh, they moved out. I froze. They moved? What do you mean they moved? This is their house. Fairy shrugged like it was no big deal. Oops, looks like they didn't tell you. Actually, they gave it to me. I live here now. I felt like the ground was shifting under my feet. They gave you the house? The one I've been paying for? Yeah, she said nonchalantly as if it made perfect sense. Mom and dad said I needed it more. You know, I'm planning on having a baby soon. They thought I should have the house. I was stunned. I asked her where are they living now? She replied, they're renting an apartment across town? As if this was the most normal thing in the world. I left without another word. My head was spinning with rage. I drove straight to their new apartment, not caring if I arrived unannounced. When my mom opened the door, I didn't waste any time and shot at her. What the hell is going on? Fairy just told me you gave her the house I bought, the house I'd been paying for. Care to explain? My mom had the nerve to smile at me like it was no big deal. Calm down, honey, come inside. We didn't think you'd mind. I went inside but didn't bother to sit. I wanted my answers. I don't know how, but my voice rose. Didn't think I'd mind? You gave away the house I bought for you, without even talking to me about it. How could you think it was not important for me to know? My mom sighed as if I was the unreasonable one. Well, we thought since you're doing so well you wouldn't mind. Fairy's planning to have a baby now. Do you want her niece and nephew to be born in a rented place and grow up in an unstable household? Now that they have the house, they don't need to worry about the rent. They can focus on other stuff and their child's well-being. I flipped out. I don't care where my niece and nephew were born and raised. I don't mind them living in a rented place. We lived in one. I still live on rent. Moreover, it's not my problem to think about them. It's Perry's and her husband's problem. If they want to have that stability, tell her to get a better job. Hearing the commotion, Dad came out of the room and said, what's this fuss about? She needs financial security. We have to give it to her. She didn't give it the same opportunities as you. We didn't pay for her college. So she deserves this house. I couldn't believe my ears. How could someone speak such nonsense? That's the advantage of being a parent. You can speak any crap you want without being called out. I replied, you didn't pay for her college because she never made it to college. She dropped out of high school. Remember? They refused to understand the gravity of their actions. They kept saying, you're successful. You can buy another one. Surely I will. But it would be for me and not you guys. I didn't even know how to respond to that. My world felt like it was spinning. I couldn't wrap my head around their logic. I just stormed out of their place. I checked into a hotel and have been lounging here since then. I really don't know what to do. I certainly cannot continue to pay the mortgage after knowing the truth, but how I deal with the situation is a real challenge. I know my parents cannot afford to pay the mortgage and there is no question my sister would be able to. This drama happened on Friday. Today is Sunday. I have my return flight on Tuesday. Earlier, I thought to book an immediate flight and go away, but when I calmed down, I realized I had a few other works here. I wanted to check how much is the loan amount left because I have been paying extra, so I think I was before schedule. Before my visit, I asked Dad about the pending mortgage amount. He said he needed to check with his loan manager. I texted him to take me to the bank tomorrow, where I get further details of the pending amount. Although I don't want to continue paying the mortgage, I still want to know the status of where it stands. It makes sense that you wouldn't want to continue paying for the mortgage after what happened. You've already done more than enough by buying the house in the first place. It's clear that your parents and sister are taking advantage of your generosity, and it's okay to set boundaries now. You're under no obligation to keep paying for the house that isn't even yours anymore. It might be worth discussing that with your parents and explaining that you can't financially support something that's been given away without your knowledge. Update 1, there's more to it. I'm literally shaking as I write this post. We just came back from the bank, and what I got to know shook me to the core. So the extra amount I was paying for the mortgage never made it to the bank. My father paid only the mortgage money and used the extra money for their own expenses, for the rent of their apartment, precisely. Can you believe it? How awful is this? I was living so frugally all these years, living so beneath my means to save some extra bucks and pay off their mortgage sooner. When the manager showed me the monthly deposits, I told him it was a mistake because we were paying almost 1 1/3 times the mortgage amount. I even opened my transaction history to show how much money I was sending to my father every month. Dad pitched in and said, manager's data is right. Whatever was the mortgage amount, we paid only that much. I thought Dad was not able to understand the complexities or was confused, but he held my arms and said, the records are correct. Let's discuss this later. I felt another blow. I was getting dizzy, anticipating another betrayal. Mindlessly, I sat there for the rest of the meeting where the manager gave us the details of our remaining mortgage and other options of merging the loans, etc. I remained quiet. As soon as the manager let us alone, my dad pulled me to the corner and asked, "Why are we talking about the extra money? Did you send it for mortgage?" I snapped, "Hell yeah. Why else would I send you extra money?" What he said next blew my mind. "I thought you sent it for our expenses. I used it to pay our rent." I just stared at him and sat on the chair with my head buried in my hands. What do I do with my parents now? He sat beside me and asked me not to create a scene. It wasn't a big deal. I flicked out at him. "No big deal? You forcefully made me buy a house for you and then you gave it on charity to Perry without even informing me. On top of that, you used the extra money from the mortgage to pay your rent. Wow. I tell you, my father is not a man who would stand and take this heat from his son, especially at a public place." He shot back at me. "Don't you dare raise your voice at me. You didn't do me any favor by buying a house. I wiped out all my savings to pay for your college. I don't need to tell you what I do with that house. You send the money and I pay the mortgage amount in time. What's so big deal if I use the extra money that's been covering our rent here? It's not like we're asking for more." I was livid at his words. I said, "The extra was to pay off the mortgage sooner, not to fund your new apartment." I stormed out of the bank. When I was walking down the lane, I could hear my father screaming my name, but I didn't look back. I kept walking to the subway station. My mom called me 4 or 5 times and also dropped a text, asking me to come home so that we could sit and discuss the matter. I didn't respond. I don't want to discuss anything. I have made up my mind and I'm going to do what I think is right. Enough of their toxicity. It's absolutely mind-blowing that he could twist this situation to make you feel like you owe him something when you've been the one making sacrifices. You have every right to feel angry and set boundaries. Taking a stand is important. OP. You've been more than generous, and it's clear that your parents are taking advantage of your kindness. Ignoring their calls and texts is completely valid right now. Focus on your own well-being first. Update 2. Sorry about all the spelling and grammar in my last update. I was shaking with anger. I had to edit it later to make it readable. I didn't even answer some of the common questions I got in the comments. Let me take that first. People ask me if my parents are Asians. No, we're not Asians. Let me burst the myth. Asians are not the only community whose parents push their children to do the extreme. Sorry, I don't want to reveal my ethnicity. Next, people ask who was the borrower. Well, the loan was in my father's name. I haven't co-signed it because I wanted to buy a new car and maybe a house in a few years, and associating myself to this loan would have impacted my future ones. Now I feel proud of my decision. It made my plan easier to execute. Coming to the update. The next day, I returned and continued with my life as usual. The month passed by and I didn't send the mortgage amount to my father. As expected, he tried to contact me on the 1st of the month, only to find out he was blocked. Not only him, but I blocked my mother, my sister, and her husband. I don't want any drama in my life. I made my decision. I stopped paying the mortgage. I wasn't going to be played like this anymore. If my parents wanted to give the house to Perry, fine. Let her deal with the payments. Let her be the one responsible for it. When my parents realized what I'd done, they lost their crap. I received some calls and voice messages from unknown numbers. Maybe they used their friend's number. I don't know. It was like, "You can't just stop paying. We don't have the money to cover the mortgage." I laughed and sighed. Well, that's not my problem anymore. I blocked all those numbers as well. Well, that was not it. 3 days later, I found my dad at my door when I returned from work. He was fuming with anger and he said, "You can't just walk away like this. You owe us. We put you through college. We made you who you are." I shot back, "I've already paid you back. Do you even realize how much I've spent on that mortgage? It's more than what you paid for my college tuition. I don't owe you anything." He called me ungrateful, but I cut him off in between and said, "No, you don't get to guilt trip me anymore. I've done enough. I'm not paying for the house, the rent, or anything else. You made your choice. Now deal with it. You treated me like a commodity where you invested by sending me to college, and now you want to milk this cow lifelong. I'm not a commodity." I just stormed out of the hallway and drove off. I didn't enter my apartment because he would have followed me inside and I wasn't ready to continue the drama further. When I came back in the night, he was gone. Mom tried calling me several more times, leaving desperate voicemails. Even Perry left a long message about how she needed the house for her future family and how I was being selfish for not helping out. Selfish? Me? The one who'd been paying for everything while she sat on her butt doing nothing? I didn't give in to any of their manipulations. I'm done with them. I have burned my hard-earned money to buy them a house, and this is what I get in return. Name calling update 3. The house was sold at auction and Perry was forced to move out. As I said, Perry couldn't afford the mortgage and my parents were already stretched thin for the rent on their apartment. They couldn't manage the mortgage, the apartment rent, and their household expenses. When I stopped the payment, I knew this would happen. It was just a matter of time. After almost a year, I got to know that the house is sold. My parents tried their best to save it by using their savings and liquidating their retirement money, but they couldn't. Things also got salty between Perry and my parents. When they were struggling to pay the mortgage, they asked Perry and her husband to pitch in for 50%, but she refused, saying the house was a gift to her and they should bear the full mortgage. It was then that my parents realized the blunder they had made, but by then, it was too late. I think my parents made a wise choice by letting the bank auction and sell the house instead of just paying the mortgage and letting Perry lounge on it. The house got auctioned, and Dad recovered a substantial chunk of money from there. The down payment and the Amy's I've been paying for these years. I know it's my money, but I don't expect a penny from it. They're not going to give it to me, and I have to let it go. At least now they cannot say they did a favor by paying my tuition. I have paid it back, and that too with interest, and now I don't feel guilty about cutting them off. What I have heard from my cousins and uncles is that my parents have moved to a smaller apartment to reduce the burden of rent. Also, the money they received from the auction of the house, they have saved it for their retirement. They have been telling everyone that they don't want to rely on me for their old age, and have been working to secure it for themselves. They have also cut off all financial support to Perry, and have asked her to fend for herself and her family. Yes, she tried to guilt-trip them again, that they paid college tuition for me and secured my future, hence they're obliged to secure a future too. However, now my parents have come to their senses and are not giving in to her demands. Well, good for them. Meanwhile, I've rented a single apartment for myself. Finally, I'll have some privacy. I have also started saving to buy my own home, a place that will belong to me and only me. It's not easy to walk away from family, but sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who take advantage of you the worst. It took me a long time to realize that, but I don't regret my decision, family or not. I deserve better than to be treated like a walking bank account. It's heartbreaking to hear how things unraveled for your family, but it sounds like they're finally facing the consequences of their actions. You're right, being treated like a commodity is not love, and you deserve so much more than that. Moving into your own apartment and focusing on saving for your future is a huge step forward. It's not easy to walk away from family, but prioritizing your well-being and financial security is essential. You've learned some hard lessons, but it seems like you're in a better place now, and that's what truly matters.